Howdy folks, Max Mogan here with the weekend edition of Off News. Trying to figure out how exactly I want to do these videos. One of the easiest ways is just kind of picking on the mainstream media. I studied communication in college. I know how the media works. I'm very media literate. So I would like to help other people get media literate because quite frankly, we are getting skull fucked by the mainstream media. And, you know, I'm going to start, I think every weekend I'm going to pick on the USA Today Weekend Edition. They've come out with a paper now that serves Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Getting lazy, getting sloppy. So, you know, that's basically almost half the week's worth of news. So why not pick on it? First off, USA Today gives us 22 pages of sports. Okay? Pretty worthless. 22 pages of sports. Contrast that with 8 pages of news and 1 page of weather. Of course, let's not forget that many of these pages of news are in fact just gigantic paper wasting advertisements, right? So, very little actual news. And the money section, money and life together, we get 4 pages, or 4 pages on money, 6 pages that is basically just entertainment fluff. So that's your news, America. 22 pages of sports, 8 pages of news, 1 page of weather, 4 pages devoted to money and economics, and 6 pages of entertainment. Add that to your sports, you got 28 pages of total nonsense, excluding advertisements. But, you know, the big news, what's in the USA Today? Are our stadiums safe? It's kind of sports too, isn't it? The leadoff headline. And, you know, not too much, really. A whole lot of crap in here. Obama's in Mexico. You know, the only page where we really get some news is kind of in the cartoon section. And I really want to touch on, you know, this is a good example of the skullfuckery of the mainstream media. Okay, opinion, our view, USA Today's view. On Guantanamo, they're tackling the big issues on page 10A. But what's important about this opinion piece, USA Today, the opinion they share is we need to keep it open. The opinion here, the opposing view, is keep it open. So both of the opinions say exactly the same thing. Let me quote this. So, as we all know, the prisoners are on hunger strike. There were 800 detainees in Guantanamo. Now, according to USA Today, there are 166. Of the prisoners who remain, 46 are deemed too dangerous to let go, but impossible to prosecute, even under the looser standards of military commissions, for lack of evidence or because evidence is compromised by torture. Okay? So none of these people have been tried for a crime. Many of these people have been tortured, and they're impossible to prosecute because there's no evidence admissible in a court of law to keep these people imprisoned. Okay? But what's USA Today's slant? If released or repatriated, there's a high probability they'd resume jihad. Oh, we're implying their guilt. They were jihadists. They were holy warriors. They were terrorists. They're implying the guilt of these people who are unprosecutable because there's no evidence against them. What to do with this group? Prisoners of war in a war without end. That's the war on terror, the war of terror. That is a question with no satisfactory answer. They have to be held. So there's no satisfactory answer. I guess we just got to hold them indefinitely without trial. Now the opposing view, keep Guantanamo open for business. The security state, big business, good money in it. And this guy says, we must continue to hold dangerous detainees who pose a risk to national security, and we must question future terrorist captures in a humane way with that best yields critical intelligence. So, long story short, USA Today's opinion, we must continue detaining people in Guantanamo. The opposing view, we must continue detaining people in Guantanamo. That is not a debate, people. That's USA Today agreeing with itself. And you know, the Syria situation, the media has been telling us for months that there's a civil war in Syria, that Assad is using chemical weapons on his own people. That's not true. Okay, there is a mercenary force funded by the United States, supported by the United States, that has invaded Syria. It is a war of aggression using mercenaries. Now they want to send in the troops, the U.S. troops, and according to USA Today, Bosnia lends clue to Syria strategy. Tagline: everyone wants Obama to do something, but the U.S. first needs a thoughtful exit plan, okay? So USA Today, right there in the tagline, they're implying everybody in the country wants Obama to invade Syria or to do something. I, for one, would prefer if our government would leave Syria the fuck alone, right? As usual, USA Today, the comics are the only spot where there are slight glimmers of truth in the weekend edition. We've got Obamacare. It's Obama and his caddy, the taxpayer. Obama has got his golf club, and his golf bag is Obamacare costs. I got it here, now you carry it. Okay, that's true. Obamacare is a scam. If the government really wanted to improve health care, all they would have to do is pass legislation to keep the healthcare providers and insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies in check. They don't need to take over the industry. All they need to do is regulate it effectively, as governments should. But now, $1 trillion of additional costs foisted on the taxpayers through Obamacare. Okay, another good one. Congress shows the big plan. As we all know, the big sequester cut. All the rich people were having a bitch fit because their flights weren't taking off on time, their private jets. So they made sure the FAA got all its funding, and it shows Congress flying on the jet. But they're like, oh, we're in, coach. Too bad those Head Start kids were left out, but we all have to make sacrifices. Hell, I am flying, coach. And you see the little kids holding onto the wing for dear life. That's a pretty good assessment. Now, it's funny, the sequester cut $85 billion of cuts from the U.S. budget. Sounds like a lot of money, $85 billion, but not when you consider that the national debt is something like $17 trillion. And also not a big number when you realize that the Federal Reserve, the privately owned, for-profit, unelected banking cartel in this country, the financial terrorists who have rigged us to explode if we disobey their edicts, they're printing $85 billion a month, right? Yeah. It's funny though, look at this, okay? Right here in the tagline it says, oh, buying $85 million a month in T-bonds. Is that a typo? Because right here, just below, it says, the Fed said it will keep buying $85 billion a month in Treasury bonds. So we got USA Today making a rather significant typo in their tagline. 85 million or 85 billion? Which one is it? It's kind of a big deal, guys. But no, 85 billion a month indefinitely is the plan. That's why the stock market's inflated. The Federal Reserve Bank is making money out of nothing, giving some of it to the government so they keep doing their dirty work, like cracking down on protesters and invading countries all over the world. The banksters want invaded. And then the rest of it goes to buying mortgage-backed securities. Okay? 85 billion a month. They're pulling out of their ass, gifting some of it to the corrupt government, and they're using the rest of it to buy up real estate. Supposedly to create jobs and to, support the real estate market so it doesn't implode entirely, right? Because people are broke. People can't pay their rent. People can't pay their mortgages. People don't have jobs. So these guys are pretending that they're trying to help the little guy, right? But how much is 85 billion every month? That's what they're printing. That's what they're pulling out of their ass. And that is decreasing the value of the money in your pocket through inflation. How much is 85 billion? Let's just assume for the sake of simplicity there are 400 million Americans. $85 billion is enough money to hand every American citizen, 400 million Americans, $212.50 every month. Okay? If you were a politician or a bankster and you really wanted to help the economy, you really wanted to create jobs, what would happen if you just gifted everybody $212.50 every month? Would they spend it? Would that money shuffling around in the economy create jobs? Would that boost home prices? Would that, increase earnings? Of course it would. So, 212.50, assuming 200 million Americans getting the money, that's $425 a month per person. But instead of giving us that money or investing it into things that actually benefit the typical American, they're using it to buy up real estate and to fund the government. Okay? And the government, oh, by the way, well, we can't really afford, to spend on citizens, so we're cutting $85 billion, the same exact amount from the national budget, but they're getting this money for free from the private, corrupt, unelected, profit-driven central banksters every month. Okay? So USA Today asked the question, is easy money a risky mirage? It looks at the quantitative easing. That is money printing. That's straight up theft. QE1 starting on the 9th. The stock market has been rallying since they started quantitative easing in 2009. Up 37% in the first 6 months after QE1 was implemented. Up 25% in the 6 months after QE2 was implemented. And QE3 starting in September of 2012, we're up 11% since then. Okay? So what they're doing is printing money, gifting it to themselves and their buddies, and using it to inflate the stock market. Now that benefits some people. It benefits people who play the banksters' game, who play by their rules, and people who already have a lot of money, which explains why in the 5 years since the economy crashed in 2008, according to Alternet, came out yesterday, the rich have gained $5.6 trillion in the recovery, while the rest of us have lost $669 billion. And those of us who've been losing money have actually been working for a living instead of gambling in the global economic casino controlled by a bunch of corrupt banksters. Okay? 5.6 trillion. The average schmo, we've lost $669 billion. Where's all that extra money coming from? Well, they're pulling it out of their ass. It's fake money. It's funny money. So yeah, it's important to know what is going on. USA Today, skullfuckery. Okay? Awful newspaper. Outright distraction, if not outright lies. And that's really all I got to say on that. The Jackson Hole Daily is actually a really good paper. And I think it's partly because a lot of these banksters, a lot of these crooked bastards live here. One of the wealthiest counties in the world, right? But what's going on, Jackson Hole News? This is Friday's paper. A lot of bad news out there. Suicide rate up sharply due to the economic decline. Somalia famine killed 260,000. Do you know about weather warfare? Well, if you want to know what's really going on in the world, you might want to look into that. There's just that kind of news. A lot of bad news. Weekend edition, interesting. Interesting stuff. Here's a good cartoon. Like I said, the cartoons usually have the most truth. We got Obama talking on the phone, the red phone, the secret phone. Hi, I'm trying to reach that NBA player to congratulate him for being gay. This is the U.S. Embassy under attack and waiting for help. And then he hangs up. Wrong number, he says. So that's obviously hearkening back to the Benghazi scandal. The whistleblowers on the Benghazi scandal have been muzzled. No one can talk about it. It's a secret, right? We got our dear delusioned friend Bill O'Reilly. The federal government has failed U.S. military amputees. Living in the shadows of the ongoing war on terror. It's a war of terror, people. We are terrorizing people. Much more than anybody's terrorizing us. 1,715 American military people who have lost limbs in Iraq and Afghanistan. Okay? The government spent $5 trillion on these wars, at least. That's $5 trillion that we know about. Okay? That's a third of the national debt. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in the Middle East are dead. And these wars were started with false flag attacks like 9/11 and waged on false pretenses like weapons of mass destruction. We got to go get Saddam's weapons of mass destruction. Okay? Here's a lesson from the law, Murphy's Law, unintended consequences. All these miners who are putting PVC pipes out in there to stake their claims. These birds that like nesting in little tight spaces. Well, they see that PVC pipe, they think, wow, that's a great nest. So they crawl down into it and they can't get back out. Here's the thought. Put a cap on it, guys. Come on. Simple. Obama, south of the border. I'm not even going to get into that. And here we go. Budget cuts. Like I said with the sequester, $85 billion a month coming from the Fed, the unelected private banking cartel, printing $85 billion a month, making your money worth less, gifting some of it to the government, and using the rest of it to buy up our country with our own money that they're loaning into existence and charging us interest on. Okay? Well, despite all the funny money slushing around, the government's cutting $85 billion out of the yearly budget. Where's it going? Well, don't worry. They were able to restore about $5 billion of the $85 billion that was going to be cut, and that $4 billion will go to the Pentagon, and another $1 billion will go to Homeland Security. Okay, so they cut $80 billion now, and they reboosted the funding for the Pentagon and Homeland Security. Now, we already know that, defense spending, you factor in the wars, the military, Homeland Security, all the bullshit police state stuff, we're spending over 60% of our tax dollars. 60% of the entire budget, a lot of its deficit spending, is going to military. They like to call it defense, but really, it's pretty aggressive. Okay? NRA, I gotta say, those guys are trying to fight for our rights, It's a culture, here's a quote from the head honcho of the NRA. It's a culture fight on those 10 guarantees. He's talking about the Bill of Rights. Mr. Obama said he wasn't going after our guns. As soon as the Connecticut thing happened, he came after our guns. A lot of people don't identify with the NRA, but at least they're standing up to Obama on the Second Amendment. You lose the second, say adios to the fourth and the first. No thank you. Okay, last bit of news, then I promise I'll wind this up. Good example of the skullfuckery of the lamestream zombie media. Multiple culprits in collapse of honeybees. This is coming from the Associated Prostitutes in Washington, D.C. Now, as we all know, in Europe they're banning a lot of these pesticides, these nasty, unnatural chemical pesticides, because there's rather compelling scientific evidence that these are one of the primary factors killing off large portions of the honeybee population that we all depend on for our basic survival, because they pollinate our crops. And they're pretty fucking cool animals too. But here in the US, don't worry about the pesticides. Don't worry about the pesticides. There are multiple causes, and it makes it harder to do something about colony collapse disorder, experts say. The culprits, the biggest culprit is a parasitic mite called Varroa destructor. Okay? That's what they're saying. That's not me. I know better. Yeah, they're blaming parasitic mites, multiple viruses, bacteria, poor nutrition. Hey, you bees, eat healthier. Genetics, habitat loss, and pesticides. Pesticides last on the list. Okay? May Berenbaum, a top bee researcher from the University of Illinois, said she was extremely dubious that banning the pesticide would have any effect on bee health. Monsanto scientists. Go figure. So, May, we don't really believe you. And, obviously, you're spraying a bunch of toxic chemicals designed to kill bugs on plants. Odds are it's also going to kill bees. And odds are Europe knows what the fuck they're talking about. Right? Another factor that's worth considering in this honeybee thing is the impact of electromagnetic pollution on bees. We know that many animals, including bees, scientific consensus is that bees will use Earth's magnetic field to navigate. It's one of the, it's like humans will use, their sense of sight and their GPS and all these other technologies to know where they're going. Well, bees will use their sense of sight, their little dances, and actually Earth's magnetic fields in their navigation systems. So, cell phones, Wi-Fi, cordless phones, smart meters, radio stations, military installations, aircraft, communications, the list goes on and on. In the last couple decades, we have dramatically increased our electromagnetic pollution output, and that is another factor. But the pesticides, obviously a factor. Don't eat organic, do eat organic, don't eat GMO. What do we got here? So, wrapping up, USA Today, 22 days of sports, or 22 pages of sports. Total dog shit. A couple pages of news, not very enlightening. This is a good one I want to touch on. Here in Jackson, we had a Robin Hood bank robber. This guy Donaldson, Corey Allen Donaldson, 40 years old. Sentenced. He's found guilty. He robbed the bank in an effort to this is his quote. He robbed the bank in an effort to redistribute some wealth from banks to homeless men and women. The judge in the trial rejected Donaldson's request to play an unedited video of his confession, where when he initially confessed to the crime, he said why. The judge ruled last week that Donaldson's reasons for committing the robbery were not relevant to proving whether he is guilty. Okay? It's funny how if they're going to try you for terrorism, if you let's say you get drunk and get in a bar fight. Oh, it's a hate crime because you beat up somebody who's a minority or homosexual, right? That's motivation. Oh, you shot somebody. Oh, you're a terrorist. They're looking at your motivation there. So why is this guy's motivation irrelevant to a case, right? Donaldson's closing argument, he dwelled heavily on the fact that he was not allowed to present the defense he wanted to present. Okay, he was not allowed to tell the jury why he robbed the bank. And what's sad about that is that banks are robbing us every day. The old saying, give a man a gun and he can rob a bank. Give a man a bank and he can rob the world. It's true. The monetary system is a scam. It's not very complicated. It's the only thing that's difficult to accept about it is the fact that we've all gotten duped through such a simple and stupid scam. So it's time to snap out of it, people. Y'all have a great night. Take care of yourselves. One love. Peace.